Alright, so here's my hallway, and you know, my kitchen floor is completed. I went and bought another box of tiles to get those last, like 5 into this corner and underneath Hoshi's bowl right there in that corner. So I sold my mountain bike yesterday. I didn't get that into the skunk video, and that gives me the money to be able to afford to get started on this today. This is basically my last project. There's a seam that runs from right over that window straight across the line and to right here that leaks. This is a metal roof, modular home, and basically they roll the edges of the sheets into each other, and because outside this shed actually slopes down to where you can pretty much just climb up onto the shed from a chair, I included, and previous tenants would just climb up onto the shed, walk up to here, climb onto the roof, and the flex of that rolled edge over and over and over and over and over again as people walked across the roof to work on the swamp cooler, they opened up the seam, and so the seam leaks, and it's going to be very difficult to recreate this pattern in these seams. So my plan is to remove the ceiling from this room, salvage a big enough chunk from right here to repair the hallway right here, and then drywall this room. Some wood on the inside with sealant on it, and some fiberglass, basically like mesh that's specifically for this kind of a repair, and stick it up on there and run screws on the outside into the wood so that open seam will get kind of pulled down onto the wood. Then if somebody walks across it in the future, it's not just going to split it wide open again. That's pretty much my final project before the mobile home goes up for sale. I did put my big pile of stuff out in the street yesterday, so that goes to my mother's storage. That's all stuff that's going to head for the boat, and there's a lot less than it looks like. Some of that's a rag bag, of course the kitty condo or kitty crate, but the kitty condo over there is going to go to my buddy Jerry's house just to give the cats a nice escape from people on the floor. And this is unknowns, and the bag is stuff to go to donation, clothes and that kind of thing. The freezer's empty, refrigerator's all cleaned out inside, but the yard's getting very, very green, so timing is pretty close to on the money. A week ago, this big tree right here had no greenery on it at all, but by the end of the week, this week, it'll be completely covered in leaves. So that'll make it easier to sell, because it's going to look nice and spring and beautiful and nice thick grass. And I've been putting this off for about a month, largely because I didn't have the money for it, but just as much because it's kind of daunting. So I'll try to give you an update as I go. So I went and got the roof patching stuff for this kind of metal roof. Stuff that's most sought after, and I've already put a patch on a patch and then resealed the patch in the past. This time I'm going to try to make it a permanent-ish kind of thing. But here's the patch after patch after patch. Can't quite tell how well you can see that, but basically there's layers. I didn't put the silver on, but that's the seam that on the inside you can see through. So I got to pull this whole patch out, and the leak is visible all the way up into right in this area, so I'm going to try to remove it up to there. I think I just did that area up there because it was leaking again, but I can't see anywhere inside of up there. It might have just been that I saw there was a seam and continued to go at it. I kind of remember doing it, but I don't know why I continued that far. But this is the seam that is open and dripping, and it continuously drips. So by peeling up the entire leak, patch, and replacing it with a brand new patch, and actually screwing this metal down to a board that has this seam sealer on the inside as well, I'm kind of hoping that I'll be able to keep it all together a little more permanently. So I'll show you on the inside. Got it all exposed. Turns out that there's 2 layers of insulation, so unknowingly I have an attic. It's about, I bet, 5 inches tall at the high point. Old spider egg casing. You can see that everything in here is pretty wet. I'm going to have to let it sit and dry out, but this metal roof right here is very warm from the sun pounding on it. You can probably even see the water droplets all over this. The fiberglass up in here is wet. I'm guessing that it gets kind of humid up in there a lot. But that seam definitely follows along, and you can see here through here, there it's all open. Most of them look like this. And the one that I thought was in question looks like that. It's definitely been stretched open from people walking on it. Where it actually starts leaking is when you get right down here to this side, and you can actually see the sun shining through the hole right there. I've got the light on so that you can see the wet areas. But I'll grab a little video here with that off so that you can really see the light. So, making progress. The sun coming through the outer roll seam. This is where I just had the light on, and you can see the open seam right there. So, water's definitely coming through that open seam as well. We'll have to screws I bought were too short, so I had to dig out some other ones, and these are a bit too long. But see how I re-supported those, and then I ran screws all the way up to the other end. I might go up and put another one in a little farther up, but that's pretty much where the seam opening ends. And these are now just there. But that, you can see there, that's the roof. It's just a metal sheet. But that's where my leak's been for years and years. So I'm going to put in a re-support right in this little corner, and you can see the seam over there. That I'll patch that up from the outside and run screws down into the piece of wood I'm going to stick into these little splits and openings, and that'll just be filler basically. And then I'll put insulation back up, and this will be ready for me to start tearing this ceiling down and try to get enough panels off of it to replace the panels in here. And I had to turn on my swamp cooler. It's terribly hot in here today. I don't know, probably 85 Fahrenheit or so, maybe a little higher inside the house. But there you go. Here we are on the roof. You can see I ran screws right in the actual seam into that piece of wood inside. Added a couple extra on that end on the right because the board had slipped a little to the left, and that gave it a little more tension. Now I'm going to smear this black roof patch material in, put a strip of this yellow fiberglass material on top of that, and then smooth it out so that it'll make a good seal. That's basically what this is, except that over years and years this whole seam had peeled up again from flexing and not having anything really holding it together. So there you go from the other side. There we are. I took down these panels. I'm really hoping that I can get enough of them to finish the ceiling in the hallway. I'll just drywall this in here. But this stuff here is terrible. It's absolute garbage. It's this. If I can get out of the light here, it's like particle board, but it's made out of cardboard. And each seam is like this, where there's like a groove. And basically, this fits into this groove like that to hide where they put the staples that are all over the ceiling like this. This stuff is just, it's cardboard. It's particle board made out of cardboard. Luckily, I only need to reinstall this little teeny stretch here of like it's about 8 feet. And so I'm going to try to cut these pieces to fill this space out here, and then I'll drywall this room. I already fixed the leak up here, and it's taken up to a good spraying, but the problem is this stuff's all through the whole mobile home. And so I want this side of the hallway to match up with this side of the hallway, and drywalling that stretch right there would not match. So we had a big leak over here, or I had a big leak over here, and then there's a small one that's right over right over here, and this piece of wood right here was an attempt to keep that area up, even though they didn't actually patch the leak. So I'm actually patching the leak. So there we go. Next step is complete. So ended up tracking, this is the hallway, by the way. This is about, it's just them chewing on each other. They do it all the time. I was able to pretty much patch this together. I've got a little gap right here, is the best I could do. This stuff is like cardboard, and when you just touch it, it falls apart, so I'm going to have to use something to seal that up. But this area stayed nice and dry. My patch over there worked very well. You know, up in that line right there. I'll have to paint it, of course, but for the most part, it looks a lot better than it ever has while I've lived here. But the leak continued, and so I dug up into this ceiling and I found this strip across here. First off, this didn't start off with this. It's Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, and just basically about 3 inches back that direction, there is literally a like 2.5 inch hole. If I were to spread the edges out, it would I could almost fit my entire hand into it. And so that led me to pull this all down after I patched that, and I did it up through there. And then after pulling this piece of insulation here down, I discovered that that whole seam's rusted on the inside, and it's most likely because the insulation was wet and it was held right against this back side. On the outside you can't barely tell, and this is actually all pretty solid. It's all just surface rust. But right here at this spot, which was a low point, there were a small hole, maybe 1 inch of like Swiss cheesy kind of area. So I patched it on the inside and I patched it on the outside, and you know, I've got the plastic all down, and basically waiting for it to rain this afternoon so that I can see if this is stopped leaking. I put a patch on the outside that runs from here all the way across to over there. Technically there is no holes anywhere in this area, but because this area was the low spot and water was draining down to it and then coming through the insulation and dripping down into this corner, which I had my bucket sitting over here, it never came down over here, but some of it did pool up in this area right here, and I can feel it because this is kind of cooler and slightly soft. I mean, it didn't collapse at all. This was damage I did to it. But that was what kind of helped me to track this, was the stove vent, you know, right here. It goes out, of course, right up there, and I could tell that the water was leaking from right between the seam I fixed and the opening over there, so that helped me to, there's a little bit of a warp to the roof, and so I was able to kind of go up and look at the way that water would flow, and that kind of tracked me to the hole that's, you know, like I said, right back there. And then I took out this piece of insulation that was all wet because it would never dry out, and I've got extra, and saw this. So I'm going to probably spray some paint on this, even though it's going to be dry from now on with the patching I did. But that'll fix my leaky roof I've had for 10 years. There's the dry insulation, and it's wrapped. This is actually the dry inner piece, but it's the exact length I need, so I'm keeping it just so that I can make my cut easy. And with all the rain we've gotten, which has basically been monsoon for 3 days, the grass is growing like crazy. Absolutely growing like crazy. Scuff with his new knee brace. He's like 12. He loves chasing the ball. And that knee was killing him. He couldn't even barely walk 2 weeks ago. So this brace has been fabulous. I don't think I'm going to have to put him down, and I'm not going to have to pay $4,000 to fix his knee, because he's running around and playing like it was his 4th year alive. Oh. Yep, that's enough of that. He is 12. There you go. There's that knee brace. Worth every penny of the $400 I spent on it. Torn ACL. Doesn't seem to be bothering him 2 weeks after I bought it at all. So we'll see if we can splice this into another video. Bye. Trying to compensate for your reversals.
Yeah, well, you know, you're the one that's dyslexic, not me here.
Yes, that's it.